Hello everyone, thank you very much for joining us in this new video of ours where we start. We had a previous video offering an introduction to what we're going to be dealing with, and today we start our first theme involving our nature. Why is that so? Because in our cultural heritage, a lot of what we know, a lot of our reactions come from our nurturing. And we tend to neglect sometimes some things of our nature. And it's extremely important to get in contact with these natural issues, with these inherent, almost biologic, if you like, biologic aspects of our formation as human beings. We are bodily. That's a point. That's a starting point that cannot be neglected. So we must not think of ourselves as not unbodily creatures. We are not vacant or hollow flying spirits. We are attached to a body. We are attached to an organism. We have a physical dimension in everything we do. Wherever you go, there you are. And what is the certainty we can have that we are there or here or somewhere else? Is the fact that our body is here, there, or somewhere else. So our body is in a certain way our guarantee. Our body is what gives us the conviction of our presence. That is extremely important. Cogito ergo sum. I think, consequently, I am. That's wonderful. But to think, cogito, I need to have, first of all, I need to have an organic, a bodily, a material, a physical presence of my own in order to be able to think. That's what we call a brain, a central nervous system. It's extremely important to understand that we are dealing with our physicality. As we spoke a few videos back, we talked about our physicality. When we were talking about we gave the example of Pinocchio. We put Pinocchio as an example of how we cannot run away from our physical, from our bodily dimension, the bodily dimension of our existence. But as also we've seen in other videos, the names of the body, how we name this physical presence of ours. Today we are going to focus on one dyadic difference which can bring huge consequences to our practice and to the appeasement, to the harmonization we can have with our own emotions and our own appearance, if you like, which is a difference between body and organism. Although they can be used alternatively, we can intertwine them when we are talking body, physical. They're actually different ways of looking at our material aspect of life. The body has something to do it is strongly connected to the idea of a cultural understanding of it. So it's where the aesthetic aspect starts. So when you have it's aesthetic because it can be compared. We're going to talk about that in just a minute. So all the aesthetic understanding we have of our body, to what a degree my body is appealing, erotically appealing, or if you like, to what an extent my appearance, my looks can influence my professional career. All these things are bodily. And the body falls under a great deal of imaginary material and symbolic material. So when I learn that I'm not supposed to be lazy, I tend to despise, to disregard my signs of tiring in my body. So I might neglect the fact that I am tired. I might neglect the fact that I am exhausted. I might neglect the fact that I'm not bearing it very well because I have a duty to fulfill. The Yanomami Indians have in their language, they make no difference between laziness and tiredness. If I mean I'm exhausted or I mean I am lazy, it is one and the same word, because they don't deal with the idea of a duty in the same fashion we do. So eventually the Yanomamis who are listening to me, they can obviously manifest themselves upon this fact. The ones up in the northern part of the country, because they're not concerned with the idea of duty, but we are extremely taken by that idea. So we have to sacrifice. We sacrifice our urinary functions, we sacrifice our eating hours, our sleeping hours. We all put these things in a second plan. Now that is bodily. I am tired when I shouldn't be, or I have to have some coffee because I'm feeling sleepy and I have to finish this task. That's when you're thinking of your physical condition as a body. From an aesthetic point of view, specifically from the looks, because this is what we could call the moral aesthetics, which our morals have a great deal of an aesthetic component to them. But we don't think about it that way, but it's true. There's a lot of morals is what looks good, what doesn't look good, what represents me, what doesn't represent me. And these things are basically, they're extremely aesthetic. Not to be seen dead in a certain situation is aesthetic. Not saying that there is no ethical aspect. There is, yes, of course, but I'm just cutting out that when we talk about aesthetic, we're talking about a body. Then we have another characteristic, which is the organism. The organism itself obeys biological laws. And in that, it's quite unlike other species. This human organism is able to do something other species don't. So we can imagine we have biological peculiarities, particular specifics that also bear a difference between us and other species. But that can be quantitative and not qualitative. It can be that we are able of a greater performance in certain aspects of our organism and not exactly a different performance. Then we have on our body, there is something else. Our bodies are prone to comparison. So when I say I am tall, that means I am taller than someone else. When I say I'm short, I mean I am shorter than someone else. There is, and then you even have for height parameters, you have a medium, a populational medium, where you can see the average human being has so much in height. Now that is all comparative. My nose is bigger than his. My nose is shorter than hers. My voice is a tenor. No, my voice is a baritone. So on and so forth. All these adjectives, all these qualifications give us the possibility of comparisons. And once we have comparisons, then we might start judging. We might become judgmental. Realize this. Supposing I am 1.98 meters. I don't know how to put that in Anglo-Saxon measures, but 1.98 meters, almost 2 meters tall. I'm okay to play basketball, but if I am 1.60 meters, 65, do you agree? I'll have more trouble being a basketball player. So obviously certain aspects will favor determined activities, which allows us to think that some people might be more adequate for certain activities. A student who is very good finds it easy to deal with mathematics might be easily put in the direction of mathematics, engineering, physics, computation, and so on and so forth. Now, this doesn't make the mathematics student better than one who is very good at reading in Portuguese or English or grammar, literature. No, they're just different. But one who is crazy about maths, doesn't like reading, it's not very easy to imagine him going to college to study journalism or law school. So that's the idea. From these more adequate biotypes, if you like, phenotypes, if you like, human characteristics, you might start to judge. So you might think that the only real good guys, the guys who have the right stuff, are those who can play basketball. If you get that into your head, you start thinking that the basketball players are superior to the other ones, the ones that do not play basketball. And if you're a literature expert and you've read hundreds of books, you might tend to think of people who haven't done so as maybe less enlightened or less able to formulate and to understand the world in the sophisticated and complex way you do. Then judgment starts. So a lot of our judgmental activity when we practice mindfulness, a lot of our judgmental attitude toward ourselves derives from our bodily conceptions of ourselves to a great degree. If you take intelligence as a bodily function, if you like, looks, then you will see that you have a huge amount of judgment, which is born precisely from the fact that the body can be compared. Now, the organism, on the other hand, is not comparable, because to my organism, it doesn't matter. It don't matter if I am 2 meters tall or if I am 1.65 meters tall. It makes no difference. Am I working okay? Is my spinal cord okay? Is my column in order? Am I feeding well? Am I living well? That's what the organism is worried with. So things that can be very welcome when I am 22 years old and practicing a certain kind of sport or delving into a certain kind of professional career, things that can be very desirable might bring inconvenience in later years of life. So it's all very feeble. It's all very easily knocked down. That's why the body usually makes us insecure, whereas the organism is reassuring, because the organism does not judge. The organism only works. It only functions. English is fantastic because the word functioning, you say work, and then work is labor too. In Portuguese, we make a difference between the two terms. So the organism works. It's just there, and it's always, always, always functioning, working, developing, evolving its activities, thinking on cherishing your well-being. So that's another characteristic that is extremely important, that the body tends to unquietness. The more you're taken by your bodily conceptions, the more you tend to become unquiet, because you're always going to find something better, worse, larger, smaller, different, and these things are usually anguishing to us. When we think of our body, we think of perfection. We want perfection. And perfection is another form of totality. And it can be choking. It can be asphyxiating. So the organism, on the other hand, tends to be appeasing. It tends to be pacifying. It tends to bring harmony. Why? Because there is no comparison at stake. There is no inconvenient comparisons. I don't compare myself to what I used to be 10 or 20 years ago. I don't compare myself with what I think I might become within 10 or 20 years in the future. All sorts of small tortures we might inflict upon ourselves when we think in bodily terms. Finally, the body tends to scatter. When we work bodily, we tend to become progressively scattered in our intentions, in our choices, in our decisions, in our strategies. We tend to become scattered. So I work with this, but then I want to work with that. Then I have, where would I look better? As a milkman or as a janitor? But the milkman, this, but the janitor. So you'll always be unquietening and you will always be scattering. The direction our bodily conceptions take us, the direction is of scattering. Whereas being in contact with our organic physicality tends to aggregate, tends to gather, tends to put together, to bring us back together. And that is an experience of appeasing, that's an experience of peace, harmony, that many people describe when they practice mindfulness or when they have other kinds of skilled choices, skilled practices to enhance their subjective, this subjective aspect of their existence. So I would end this talk of ours here bringing the following. There is an example, and this is an example given to me by a gynecologist, which said the following: it is impossible to examine, to evaluate a boob. He was a mastologist. He or she was a mastologist. Mastology. That's how we call it in Brazil. Specialized in breasts. And he said it's impossible to evaluate a boob during an interview, during a consultation session. It's not possible. You're examining a gland. You're examining the organism. You're seeking for pathology. You're seeking for dysfunction. Whereas when you think about the beach, in which is the best bikini or the best swimsuit, the best set to go in harmonizing your appearance with your breasts, then you're dealing with your boobs. I'm sorry for the strong word, but I mean, I'm trying to be here quite comparative. I mean, showing a distinctive contrast. So you will see boobs on the beach, you won't see breasts. But when a person is being submitted to an X-ray or to a treatment, to radiation, whatever, it's not a boob, it's a breast. So that's basically the difference between the organism and the breast. Sorry, the organism and the body. It is this is a small difference. But do you realize when you're practicing, you're coming in contact with your breath. Your breath is not bodily. Your voice might be considered bodily, but not the breath that gives birth to the voice. So you just abandon any judgment, you abandon any comparison, you abandon any superiority, inferiority concepts which put us down the gutter. That is the important part. Depending if by any chance we practice and we start getting taken by our bodily considerations. Oh, I've got a big tummy, I should slim up. Oh, I think my hips are this or my hips are that, or I'm not as efficient as I should be right now in this moment of practice. Whenever you do that, you're scattering toward your body. So when you breathe and disregard these concerns, then you start going in the direction of your organism, and that is what is healthy, extremely healthy for our psychological well-being and our equilibrium, our balance in life, is that we can be freed, we can live, breathe, free from comparisons and judgments. So I hope this video has helped you, and when you next practice, or when you next, if you practice, or if not, if you're just a reflexive person, just take into consideration the fact that your physical sensations, where your back is sitting, where your hips are sitting, where your feet are, all these things are extremely important in the sense of putting us together, the opposite of imagining. Thank you very much for having followed us. If you enjoyed the video, give us a like, share, comment, and subscribe to our channel to catch up on the other videos which relate to this one you have just watched. Thank you very much.